Yo guys, so just before we start another episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast, just a reminder that we are now on Spotify. So please head down into the link in the description, check us out on Spotify and enjoy the episode.
I see my friends, they're going out most weekends and stuff like that. And then they're like, oh, Joe, you coming? It's like, oh, no, I'm going to Switzerland this weekend. And then, they're like, oh, lucky you get to travel everywhere. But yeah, we do get to travel places, but I rock up to the hotel close to midnight the night before my race, go to bed, race the next day, fly home that evening. So I'm not even in the country for 24 hours half the time. But it is hard. You do sacrifice quite a lot. Sacrifice going out, seeing your mates, sacrifice a lot of family time. And because this is summer sport, I haven't been on holiday with my family for about 4, 5, 6 years now. So it's been, it is hard, but it's my decision. I enjoy doing it. So.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast. I am amazingly joined, I say it all the time, but with Joe Brier, obviously an Olympic runner, 400-meter runner as well. So thanks very much for coming on, Joe.
Thanks for having me. Excited.
No worries. So, mate, which not a lot of people know this, and I didn't really tell you to start with because it's a bit of a secret. So a little bit of an icebreaker question for you now. This is I don't know if this is embarrassing or not, but the way I came across you, even though with all your accolades, is through Archer's Essentials on Instagram. So I'm going to make things difficult for you because I actually respected some of your choices. Was it a pillowcase as well? Get a bit of routine in there. But obviously, if you would have only one essential that you could use aside from running, we'll make it interesting, okay? Because then you can't say a sprint and spikes. That's a bit too easy. Go on.
What essential? Oh God. I'd probably say at the moment it's got to be my hairdryer. I don't go anywhere without it because I'm off to Switzerland on the weekend. And you just don't know. See, they may or may not have a hairdryer. Sometimes the hotels do have like a built-in one, but it's like one of those very like pathetic. You may stick your head out the window and dry your hair there.
Getting on telly more. You got to be prepared.
Yeah, exactly. So this hairdryer I've had it since 2015. It cost £8 for Boots, and it's just never let me down, really.
So a cheap little plug, that one there. Oh my word.
Yeah.
Boots, you done all right. Boots is done all right, mate. We done all right. So obviously, like I said, many accolades here, ladies and gents, but I think it's important that obviously Joe mentions it himself, obviously finishing with an absolute unbelievable year, obviously last year, but I'm not going to ruin it. I'll let obviously Joe, if you want to give us a quick background on yourself. And obviously Joe is half of the brother and sister combination who have obviously been selected yesterday for the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham later this year. So many congrats, mate. Hopefully we'll get Hannah on at some point. Complete the double act. But yeah, do you wanna crack us off, mate? Give us a bit of a background about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a 400-meter runner. I'm originally from Neath, South Wales. Moved to Cardiff for uni. Haven't really left. Currently doing a master's there as well. I finished that in about August, September time.
What's your master's in?
Sports broadcasting.
Nice.
Yes. So enjoying that. Last year I competed at the Olympics in the 4x4. That's probably like the highest point in my career so far. But this year I've got the Commonwealth Games, and hopefully I can get out there and maybe bring home a medal just to, put the icing on the cake, really.
It's not bad, not a little bad CV you got there going on, mate. We'll get a bit into each of the details, obviously finishing with later on this year. But what got you into running? Obviously, because I think it's fair to say that it's quite a very difficult sport to kind of keep going. Obviously, a lot of people is like, oh well, he runs and he does anything else. How boring is that? But that's not the case with yourself. What got you into running and what made you stick with it?
So I didn't start off as a runner. I was doing like as you do when you're a kid. You're doing football, rugby, cricket, everything on the side. But my mum used to run quite a lot. Used to be part of an athletics team, so she took myself and my sister down one year. My sister sort of gravitated more towards the athletic side of things. I I was still doing athletics, but I was playing rugby and football. I enjoyed that more. I was doing athletics. It's just something else to do really on a weeknight. And gradually over time, I got better and better at athletics. Football and rugby I still enjoyed, but I wasn't really getting much better. And yeah, so all of a sudden I just when I was about 16, 17, I had a big boost in athletics and I got really, quite good. I was getting picked for Wales teams, GB teams, stuff like that. And then that's when I pushed, all the other sports aside and decided to concentrate on running, and it's taken off from there really.
You're not doing too badly at it. You're not doing too badly at it. That's fair to say. What was the turning point for you? Obviously, because we talk about it a lot. I don't know. I just sport and exercise science, so we talk about it a little bit in terms of the psychological side. What was your sort of, how difficult was it to kind of narrow yourself down and obviously be like, right, cool. Running is probably, being selected for this squad and this squad and this squad, and obviously I need to probably prioritize that time a bit more. Was that quite a difficult decision for yourself, or?
Yeah, it was. So the turning point for me to sort of get out of the contact sports was I was getting injured all the time. And I knew I was quick basically. So I was always on the wing and stuff in rugby, and I was playing left back, right back in football. So yeah, it was just the injury side of things was just difficult. There was one year where I had to have an air ambulance and stuff come down for me in rugby, and I think that was my last rugby game. I was like, I'm done with this now. I'm just gonna crack on and run in. My mum was relieved that I decided then to just carry on with running.
I was gonna say, your mum and your sister were probably trying to push you throughout everything, and then you're saying, no, I'll carry on, and then
yeah, and then that was a turning point for me, and then football just gradually drifted away from that. Enjoy watching it. I only recently I got rid of my I did used to have a season ticket down at the Swans, but I don't have that anymore because I moved to Cardiff. But yeah, just my parents, my mum and stuff were very happy I chose running then, just to keep myself healthy and fit.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, isn't it? It's quite a difficult decision, especially if someone's like being identified as a pretty good talent for something. It's probably the same with like football and rugby if they're playing in whichever way. So for me, I kind of think it's quite a brave decision, isn't it? Especially if you're making the decision yourself. I think a lot of people people who get released from academies probably end up saying that they probably got pushed into it as well if they didn't do other sports on the side. Like obviously I said I did a bit of work at Cardiff City's academy, and you tend to find that a lot of the kids do like 2 or 3 sports, which is obviously brilliant. But then obviously when they get up to the old age groups, it's a bit more investment into the player.
Keep it up, can you?
Exactly. No, apart from like keeping up, I think it's good for, you need to allow kids to be kids at the end of the day, isn't it? And try new things. If not, they're going to get bored of it. Obviously, everyone probably goes through a bit of a mental block with whatever sport they're doing at some stage. I think it's good to obviously have a bit of time to do other things. Yeah, all the cricketers I've had on the podcast or footballers as well, they always say how they try to get away by, I don't know, going 5-a-side or anything like that. So do you normally tend to, I normally intend to ask a question at the end, how do you normally switch off, like from, I don't know, after a race, or are you quite sort of, is it in your head for a little bit, fair bit, like afterwards, for example?
No, I feel like athletics is very like a mental sport, but I feel like I'm good at just shutting off races and shutting off training. Like I think I'm one of the best to do that. So I just, I have a bad race or whatever, I'm good at being like, right, don't really care about that anymore, it's done. But yeah, shutting off wise, what most players do, FIFA, I watch. I'm currently going through the whole of Drive to Survive again. Just
nice.
Yeah, just gonna love it. I love it so much. And just I obviously back home I have my dogs and stuff I like to mess around with. So it's yes, mentally it's a very hard sport, but I feel like I'm good at being able to shut off and do other things apart from constantly locking in and thinking about athletics and training and stuff like that.
Did it take you a while to like build up that sort of like, well, the next race, that race is done and on to the next one? Did it take you a fair bit to be like, did you still overanalyze? I know for a fact that I play cricket, so I overanalyze everything, even from if the innings has just happened or the overs happened. I think it's naturally the person I am, and obviously, hopefully, fingers crossed that like sort of I develop that attitude as I go on. But I think it's important to admit that probably everyone goes to a stage where they overanalyze and they think what's happened to do this way, or sometimes they can't just sort of accept the fact that it's just a bad race. Did that take you a while?
Yeah, it does. It did, to be fair. And the past few years, I have had some pretty, dire races, but that's all like about you learn from it, you develop from it. So if I make a mistake in one race about 3 weeks ago or whatever, I know for a fact I won't make that mistake again. So I don't stress myself about it. I sort of just, get on with it. So for example, in the 400 meters, it's very easy to overcook it in the first half of the race, and then you're like, hanging on. For the latter end, and then for a fact that in your next race you're not going to do that because it didn't work. So it's about forgetting about that, concentrating then in your next race just to put those wrongs and make them rights, really.
And how, for obviously people who probably aren't too much sure about athletics, what obviously everyone sees the under 45-second time or what have you, where you obviously are racing on the track. And do you mind giving obviously the viewers a bit of an insight into what, or the listeners as well, sorry, now it wasn't Spotify, the listeners as well, sort of what goes on sort of behind the scenes? Obviously everyone probably understands that it's on the track, but obviously not everything happens on the track, does it?
No. So so you know how you're going to perform. For me, I know how I'm going to perform the night before I even get to the track. Really, it's all mental. So behind the scenes, I have quite a big team. I have my coach, I have my physios, I have my soft tissue therapists, and it's a very mental game. So prior to competitions, I tend to, obviously in training, after with my coach, and then day before it's a routine. I like to see my physio the day before. Then I have certain set breakfast and stuff like that, which is just it's not like for the nutrition of it. It's just, I don't know, something mental. I gotta have my porridge of blueberries or maybe a bit of Nutella or whatever. Just it's what I've always had before a race, and it seems to work. So I gotta have that basically.
Would you call it more of like a superstition, or more of like routine for you to know that the race, even if you have a good or a bad race, do you kind of tend to stick with that based on because you've had a good race beforehand, or just because you like a bit of routine?
I think it's a bit of routine. On the superstition side of things, I definitely have one thing that I have to wear the same pair of boxes to race in. Okay. So I've worn the same pair of boxes the past 3 years. That I have to run.
He does wash it, ladies and gents. By the way, it's not what you think.
They are washed, but it's the same pair of boxes. When I got those boxes on, I know I'm in shape. I know I'm gonna run well. But that's athletics, and I feel like a lot of people do the same thing.
I think it's interesting that you talk about routine there, because I had Kieran Carlson on the podcast with Stephen Raingold about professional cricketer for Glamorgan, and they both kind of spoke about routine there a little bit. And I found it interesting. Kieran says he normally sleeps before he goes up to bat, and that's his routine. It normally sort of gives him that perception that he doesn't have to think about too much, and he goes in with a clear mind. Is that something for you which is important about having that routine, rather than sort of, obviously it's important to have repetition, but is it so much for you so you don't have to think about too much, or just, again, it's almost similar down the superstition route, do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I can get on that. Routine is very important. You just know that you've done everything how you should have done leading up to your performance. So leaves like no pages unturned, basically. So making sure you are drinking the right amount of water, staying hydrated, taking your supplements and vitamins or whatever at the right time, knowing you've done absolutely everything possible in your power that you can, you're then going to perform. I completely agree with that. Having routine is very important.
And how quickly are you to change your routine if you feel, or maybe not a change, or maybe like a slight adaptation to that routine? Is it does it take a couple of times for possibly a race not go your way to change that routine, or are you pretty sort of head on and be like, no, right, this isn't going to really affect my performance if I change it? What's your sort of threshold to change it?
Yeah, so it wouldn't change your performance, that much, because being, in elite sport, you do find that you are a bit all over the place a lot of the time. So you're traveling a lot. You maybe won't be having the right nutrition and stuff like that prior to races, and the correct amount of sleep. So it could, your routine could be a bit different, but it doesn't. I don't feel like, as long as you're doing everything you can to make sure you're sticking into some sort of routine, you should be. You should be fine if you're staying in that mental routine. You should be all good, basically.
Perfect. And moving on to sort of talking a bit more about Tokyo now, I think is quite a good way to lead on to it. Could you give us an insight into sort of the lead up to that? Because obviously there's a qualification process, I imagine, to be able to get a certain time to be able to reach the Olympic Games. So what was the process sort of leading up to it? Obviously everyone knows that the schedule was a bit messed up. But do you mind giving us an insight into how that went down?
Yeah, so I wouldn't, for me personally, I don't think I would have gone to the games if they were in 2020. So from 2020, 2021, I progressed, quite a lot. So I think I took almost a second off my personal best between 2020 and 2021.
That's quite a lot, isn't it? So for our viewers and listeners, it's in athletics, obviously, where you're thinking about milliseconds and tenths of a second. A second is a lot.
Yeah, so a second in 400 meters is about 7-8 meters, I want to say. Oh. So yeah, it was quite a lot. So yeah. For me, it was good that the games got postponed for my, for me to get selection to go. But yeah, leading up into the games, the qualification period was very difficult. We obviously had the trials and stuff like that. I didn't run. I think going into, because I progressed quite a lot. Going into the trials, I was up there with like the top 3, top 4 in the UK. So it's always going to be hard. Then I actually ended up running pretty bad in the trials, really bad in the trials. So then selection was the next day for them not selecting me. So I had a phone call saying, unfortunately, you haven't been picked. But I wasn't. Obviously, I was a bit gutted, but I wasn't too upset because a year prior, I wasn't even on my cards basically to go to the Olympic Games. So I was a bit upset, whatever, gutted. But then, not many people know this, but then I then got selected for my own age group championships, so my European under 23 championships in Estonia. I was meant to go to. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to the Olympics, but hopefully I can go to Estonia and try and win that basically for my age group, and that looked pretty good on my CV for the next few years. Yeah. But then the day before I was meant to fly to Estonia, one of the selectors actually rang me for Tokyo and was like, yeah, we need you to come to Japan basically for the relay team. So because I'd raced a few of the British guys a few weeks before, and I'd beaten them or whatever. So I had the call up to go to Japan. Then a day before I was meant to go to Estonia. So yeah, I went out to Tokyo for the 4x4. Ran on the second leg of the relay, and yeah, it was pretty an insane experience. So the whole month leading up to Japan was pretty hectic. I was not going to Tokyo, then I was going to Estonia, then I was going to Tokyo, not going to Estonia, then I was not running in Tokyo, then I was running in Tokyo. So it was a lot. There was a lot going on. So it was long.
Mate, well, I think it's fair to say no one can take that away from you, that you obviously being and running an Olympic Games. So for you, was there a big difference? Obviously, we'll go into sort of like a bit more psychological side in a sec, but was there for you, did it matter whether it was relay or individual, or?
No, not really. So I was just happy to be there if you get me for the relay. The individual qualification was a bit too far out of my own reach. And me and my coach, we knew that going into the year. So it was going to be, we knew it's something extreme would have to happen in my training and racing for me to run the individual qualification. Yeah. So we did, target the relay, and yeah, we hit that on the head, basically, got that. So yeah, I was really happy.
How did that that was my next question to you, was having, it's important obviously to have like sort of, obviously it's no disrespect, but to have like realistic goals at the same time, at the same, I think everyone can say if you're in that sort of Olympic realm sport where Olympic qualification is possible, you probably always target the Olympic Games. And I think, how important was it for you to be realistic at the beginning of the season, be like, right, cool, this time is a bit out of reach, and then this time is though, and let's push for that.
Yeah, so it's pretty important. You see a lot of people in elite sport, especially, you know, athletics who go into a season and, you know, you could have, they're like, oh yeah, my goal this year is to break the British record or run a world record, when, you know, realistically, people know you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So you're sort of setting yourself up for failure. Obviously, you got to aim high and stuff, but, you know, be realistic with your goals. So for me, my goal this year was, obviously I want to, you know, break the British record or whatever, be the fastest person in Britain as out of 400 meters. But I know this year that isn't going to happen. Potentially in, you know, the next 5 years, I'd say as a long-term goal that I want that to happen. But this year for me was just, you know, first of all, qualifying for the Commonwealth Games, and then ever since being selected, the goal has changed now, because, you know, I'm running pretty quick, and I'm ranked pretty well in the Commonwealth countries. Now the goal's changed to me wanting to, you know, medal at the Commonwealth Games instead. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge, but it's always good, you know, set them realistic, make them achievable, basically. So then you're setting yourself up for success and not a downfall.
I suppose it's quite, I think it's a little bit harder than a lot of people think, where they'd be like, oh yeah, I'll just set myself this, and if I don't reach it, whatever, but I'll set myself a lower target, and if I get higher, fantastic. I suppose it takes a lot of thought and a lot of training as well, because obviously at the same time, if you've not got data there to prove or rankings, like you said, it's quite difficult to say that. So what for you, what sort of end of the spectrum are you? Are you probably more towards sort of aiming a little bit lower and then obviously wanting to achieve higher, or so do you set yourself the high goals to be able to strive for them, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so I'll set my goals high, but for, you know, a few years time, and then from there it's just, you know, gradual progression to get those goals. So I remember when I was younger, obviously when I was about 16 and I was watching Rio 2016, I was like, I want to go to the, you know, Tokyo Games. I'll be 21 at the time, but they got postponed, so I was 22 at the time. And I got pretty lucky in getting that. And then obviously the goals have changed now to me wanting to be one of the best 400 meters Britons I've ever had. And I know it's not going to happen in the next 12 months, but in the next, you know, 36 months, it could very, very easily happen. Not easily, but could, you know, very realistically happen of me getting up there. So yeah, definitely set them high. But if you're going to set them high, make sure you set a good time scale. So don't be, at the moment I'm running 45.5 seconds, and then by the end of this year I want to be running 43 seconds, because everybody knows like that's not going to happen. So just, you know, obviously in a few years I want to be running, you know, 44 low, maybe 43 high seconds, but I'm going to say that's going to be in 3-4 years time. So just got to be realistic with it.
How, again, similar to my question about your routine, how sort of quick are you to adapt a goal based on how things are going, both in a positive and a negative way? Because if you're saying, right, you're hitting 45s at the minute, and tomorrow in training, obviously, hopefully this does happen, you run a 43.5. Obviously it's quite difficult, but how do your goals adapt from there, being like, okay, cool, this is a bit more realistic than I thought here, I've sold myself a bit short? Do you push yourself that little bit lower to get an even quicker time straight away, or do you normally give yourself a couple of sort of races to hit that, and then you're like, oh, okay, now can I change it to a little bit further field?
Yes, so definitely you've got to be more consistent with you know, achieving your goals. So if if I'm hitting 45.5, if I hit 45.5 once, for example, and then I go, right, okay, I want to run 44.5, be like, no, we've got to hit 45.5 3, 4, 5, 6 times maybe, and then, you know, set your goal to break your PB again and go, you know, half a second to a second quicker, and then that's what sort of me and my coach do. At the moment I've run 45.7 about 3 or 4 times now, and we know that you know, I've got a 45.4, 45.3 in my locker. I just need to, you know, be more consistent with my racing, and then one day I know it'll drop, and then before I run 44 seconds, I'll have to run 45 low, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, for example.
How does the training sort of times differ to the race times in how you and your coach analyze things? 'Cause I think it's interesting because a lot of people talk about in races, they probably tend to get a little bit more adrenaline, so they feel like they've almost got a little bit more in the tank, or obviously, especially with 400 meters, where you say obviously it's very easy to overcook the first sort of half of the race. How much does the crowd affect you in something like athletics? Obviously, where it's normally big stadium, sort of quite loud. How does that affect you?
You do definitely get more of a buzz with a crowd. So I raced in the Birmingham Commonwealth Games Stadium 3 weeks ago on the Diamond League circuit. So it was a pretty big competition. The stands were full, and obviously you get a buzz. You're like, right, I'm gonna run as fast as possible to get the win or whatever. It's like, no, you bring yourself back down to earth and be, just not overcooking at all and stick to your race plan. During that race, and not be like, right, I'm going to go and run something obscene here and show everyone how good I am, because if you haven't been hitting those times in training, you're not going to. So obviously, me and my coach, we'd spoken prior to the race, and we knew the main outcome of that race was not to run as fast as possible, just to win the race and beat all the other Brits in the race, which was our main small goal for that competition, which I managed to do. Forgot about the time whatsoever, and just race to win. And sometimes when you do that, you do run your quickest. But having a crowd there for me is interesting, because they are a bit of a they are a bit distracting, but it's better to have them there than not there, because in Tokyo there was absolutely no one in the crowd, and it was just running like. It was just running a training rep, for example. There wasn't anybody there. You could hear every footstep, every breath, which is not what you like to hear in the 400 meters, but it is what it is. What
then do you know? What's the best way of kind of saying this, in terms of, like you said, it felt like training? Did that kind of, obviously you said negative, maybe not negatively affect you, but it felt a bit bizarre. How did that sort of differ or help the pressure of running at an Olympic Games, if it sort of was very similar to sort of running a training rep, if that makes sense? Because obviously adversely, it probably, you're like, I'm running at Olympic Games here, but you're like, you're looking around and like, well, there's no crowd. I don't feel like I'm running at Olympic Games. It feels like I'm training. So did that help the nerves a little bit, or not so much?
No, so it was still, pretty intense. I was stood there in a starting lined up against, the quickest guys in the world. So that was pretty intense. I was still, very nervous, but it was just, a bit frustrating there. There was nobody there. The nerves and everything were the same. We'd been racing without a crowd for, a year or so prior to that. So it was, in the UK, we were used to it. It's just the guys were a hell of a lot quicker, really. So it was a lot harder.
Well, that's better insight than that. I suppose it was a bit bizarre watching on TV as well, seeing sort of no crowds there. You almost feel like how I know, for example, I felt a little bit sort of for them in that respect. It's same thing must have been with footballers and sort of cricketers when there was no crowd as well. You almost use it to your advantage in a certain sense. Like I said, obviously not trying to focus on them too much, because obviously it could have an adverse effect on you. But for you, sort of, is there a way? And I know, again, a lot of cricketers that have spoken to the podcast come and say, maybe not blanking it out, because then you're obviously still thinking about them because you're trying to physically block them out, or mentally block them out, sorry. Is there sort of a way that you almost zone in on your lane and that's it? Or for you, do you almost take time to take it in, waiting for the blocks whilst they're calling everyone's names out?
Yeah, so you do. I do. So I am good at zoning in on my own lane. That's something I've worked on the past few years. There's been a few races, big races in the last few years, but I've royally messed up just because I've been not concentrating myself and looking what other people are doing, etc. But I feel like the more you race, the more you do get used to that. So yeah, just for me, I feel like I'm, getting a lot better at staying concentrated in my own lane and sticking to my own race plan and not really thinking what anyone else is doing.
It goes back to what we were saying about routine and repetition and experience, isn't it? Because obviously at the end of the day, you get better by doing things a certain amount of time. I can't remember who exactly said the quote, but that you have to do something 10,000 times in order to almost master it in a way. So I suppose that's what racing is, and it differs. I think it's similar to what I do with cricket as well. It's like almost batting in the nets or training in the nets is so different to batting out when you're in the middle of the wicket, and then you're like, well, you need to play more games of cricket. Is it similar to yourself? Obviously the skill is very similar, obviously, with cricket, but the atmosphere differs. It makes it quite different, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So you can do as many, training reps as possible, but until you actually do put yourself out there in a start line against other people, you actually have no idea what sort of shape you're in. And for example, you can do perfect block starts in trading 100 times over, but until you do it in a race, a master in a race, and do it again against people who are actually getting out ahead of you, then you've still got a long way to go, really.
Yeah, that's what we're saying, ladies and gents. Get out of your comfort zone a little bit. Obviously, was it tough for you probably when you started getting obviously to the higher levels where, like you said, the Diamond League, for example, obviously is quite notorious for being an incredibly high level, and obviously known for obviously being one of the pathways to qualify for the Olympic Games. So did it take a bit of adjustment for that then? To be able to get to sort of getting used to the crowd being filmed, things like that?
It took a bit of an adjustment to get used to the crowd, because we haven't had them there for so long, and my progression over the years, I really started to come through when I was about 19, 20, and by then we hit COVID and stuff. So I didn't really challenge. I didn't really race with the crowd at all until this year. So that was quite a difficult one. But in regards to racing on like the big stage against some of the quickest guys, I've done a lot of the junior stuff, like World Junior Championships and stuff like that, where we've had some very quick guys. Had my senior call up when I was 19, and I remember stood in the start line, and I just knew I was going to get absolutely battered in the race, but I enjoyed it basically. So I've been there on a big stage on TV and stuff like that before. So I feel like I'm pretty good at keeping my head well on TV. But yeah, having the crowd back, it is nice, but just need to concentrate more on myself and not who's watching it really.
How much, and you made a really good point there, how much do you need to just say all the training is done, just enjoy it? How much does that play a factor for you in that sense then, regardless of or maybe not regardless, but depending on the level that you're at? Can you say, right, at no disrespect to the European level, but can you almost say the same thing at a European level compared to like a world level, like the World Champs or the Olympic Games? Like, say, just enjoy it.
So you have got to enjoy every time you do run. If you're not, you're not gonna run well. So I go off, if you're not enjoying it, then there's no point doing it. But in the back of your mind, you don't enjoy doing it, you're not gonna run well. So you just gotta love doing it. So I definitely enjoy every competition I do. Win or lose, preferably win. But it is it's a major factor. Enjoying what you do and love what you do. Like I've been a bit of a 400-meter geek for the past few years, so I can reel off times anybody's ran, just because it's something I like doing. So yeah, it's just you have really got to enjoy the sport to do well.
I think everyone would be a bit naive if we didn't think that obviously there's going to be times where you're going to obviously have to spend, obviously metaphorically, time in the dirt, and there are going to be times where there's going to be struggles. Would you mind sort of maybe opening up to something you might have experienced in terms of, obviously it's a bit wet, it's a bit cold, what's some of that like? Because obviously I think it's important to understand that there's two sides of every success story, and the times where there are tough moments as well. And I think that builds such a good athlete and such a good person at the end of the day. Do you mind sharing some of them if you've had any?
Yeah. So yeah, track, it's you go into every competition praying for nice weather. You're not going to run quick unless the sun's out, zero wind and stuff like that. When it is raining and windy, you have just got to get on with it. But mentally it's a difficult one. So last year when I ran really bad at the Olympic trials, it was raining, it was windy, it was just an awful day. But I couldn't use that as an excuse because it was the same for everyone on the day. So it is a difficult one. It's hard to get out of your head that, you know, you still need to run as fast as possible regardless of the weather. And you know, another factor that does play a big part is injuries. So luckily enough, I haven't had any, you know, major injuries in my career so far. I get a few hamstring tears every now and again, but nothing, you know, like grade 1, nothing, you know, that puts me out for the year. So that is difficult because, you know, you got to step back for 2-3 weeks, and then, you know, build your running back up again, get it back up to full speed, and, you know, it's always in the back of your mind when you're sprinting that you've got, you know, some weakness there. But it's the sport. Like injuries come with elite sport, and it's just something you have, you know, got to get on with. And if you are unfortunate to get injured, then it's about being consistent then with your rehab and not falling off a cliff basically, and you know, try not to fall into that downward spiral of, you know, getting depressed and stuff like that, and then not training properly, nutrition's out the window and all that.
Did it take you some time to develop a hard work all the time attitude with everything? Because it's a question I've begun to ask quite a bit, regardless of even if whether I know the story of this individual already, for example. But did it take you a while to almost do that? I think a lot of people have sort of highlighted some athletes who probably almost coast it because they probably have that natural talent. But obviously, I think it's quite a cliche thing to say is obviously, talent is 1% of, and then hard work is the rest. Did it take you that time to almost realize that you had the talent, but you needed to obviously add this hard work to get to where you are now?
Oh yeah, definitely. You see it a lot in athletics. You see some, you know, really, really good 17, 18-year-olds who, you know, are just battering everybody at the time, and then turn 20, 21, and they're nowhere. It's because they've got the talent at a young age, but then they don't put in the work in, you know, the vital years, the 3 vital years basically. And yeah, and you see it a lot in Britain. You know, people, you know, young athletes winning their British age group championships, and then not being able to transition through into that senior ranks just because they sort of not had it easy, but been so naturally gifted that they haven't had to work as hard as everybody else. Luckily, I wasn't, you know, a fantastic athlete when I was younger, so I have come up the hard way. And, you know, it's like I never won a medal at my age group championships or anything like that. And it was only when I was 19, 20 when I really, you know, came through and started running, you know, respectable times. So
it's quite bizarre that and that's quite an interesting thing that you just said there, because you're saying that obviously you're glad in that sense. Did that take you, so again, I've said this question about 10 times, but did it take you a while to almost adopt that mentality, being like, well, I'm actually glad that I had a bit of sort of an attitude about, right, I'm not probably the greatest at my age group, but I know that I've worked 10 times harder than the rest of the field?
Yeah, definitely. It's just looking at the time is frustrating. I was like, why am I training so hard and not being as good as these guys my own age? And then looking back, you know, I'm glad that I'm, you know, up there with the best in Britain now, just not just my own age. So I'm glad that I had to go through those difficult, you know, losing times when I lose every race. I'd only, you know, maybe work harder, and, you know, I've overtaken quite a few people now, which is and like people say, you remember what you do as a senior. So you're a senior athlete for, you know, a lot longer than you are a junior athlete, which is you know, so true.
And how patient do you have to be then when you get to possibly that senior, well, possibly maybe the latter end of the junior level, and then the first bit of the senior level where you are going up against possibly a 27-year-old who's been in the field for nearly 6-7 years versus yourself, who's in your first year on the pro circuit or your first year on the Diamond League, for example, where you know that there's a likelihood that you could get beat because you are that younger athlete. How patient do you have to be at those stages to be able to be like, no, right, cool, like a little bit of patience, you know, once I've got a bit of time on the circuit, you know, I could end up sort of beating these guys in a year, 2 years time.
Or even it is. You have got to be very patient. So, you know, a story from myself. My first British Senior Championships was when I was 19, and I came something like 4th in my semi-final and didn't get through to the final or whatever. But fast forward 2 years, 3 years then, and I'm one of the favourites going in to win not win the whole thing, but win a medal, which is at the time when I was younger, I was getting frustrated. I was like, wow, aren't I making the final and beating off these guys? But now that would have done me no good at the time. It just maybe even hung me to work harder and get to the place where I am now.
That's a brilliant story. Now, one thing which I think we got a little bit of time left, which is brilliant. So, for yourself, how obviously everyone sees all the time you put on the track, but again, another bit of sacrifice. And what people think is a lot of traveling. A lot of people think, oh, he's traveling the world. What a lucky guy. To a certain extent, obviously, it comes with a bit of sacrifice, family time, and things like that. Is that something a lot harder than a lot of people think as well?
Yeah, it is. It's very difficult. I see my friends, they're going out most weekends and stuff like that. And then they're like, oh, Joe, you coming? It's like, oh no, I'm going to Switzerland this weekend. And then, they're like, oh, lucky you get to travel everywhere. But yeah, we do get to travel places, but I rock up to the hotel close to midnight the night before my race, go to bed, race the next day, fly home that evening. So I'm not even in the country for 24 hours half the time. But it is hard. You do sacrifice quite a lot. Sacrifice going out, seeing your mates. Sacrifice a lot of family time. And because this is summer sport, I haven't been on holiday with my family for about 4, 5, 6 years now. So it's been it is hard, but it's my decision. I enjoy doing it, so I wouldn't see it as much of a sacrifice if I enjoy doing it. But I do like taking a break and doing other things at the same time. So I'll do, there's enough, I've got the rest of my life really to go out with my mates and stuff, go on holiday. So it's just realizing that really.
Does it make it a little bit easier knowing that you got your sister there the majority of the time as well, I suppose, to a certain extent?
Yeah, definitely. So we're both on the same page. We both, do the same sport, go through the same emotions, stuff like that. So it does make it a bit easier. And it's good knowing that other people in the sport, do the same, go through the same emotions. So it's just what comes with being an athlete, really.
I think it's the things that people don't see. Again, like you say, rocking up to a hotel room at night, racing and going home the same day. I think it's not what people probably perceive. No, it's probably like, oh, they rock there 2 days early, they get to chill the first day, they possibly do a couple of sessions, they race, and then they have all this free time. But obviously, that in the pro circuit is probably a little bit more intense than that. So that's a brilliant insight. Obviously, guys, I've learned a hell of a lot about athletics and what it takes. So we're going to into a bit of a quick fire and you can name as many people as you want. What about an influence for you doesn't have to be obviously athletics, but probably could be outside as well? Who is there been sort of 1 or 2 or maybe 3 or 4, 20 individuals that have probably helped you sort of with your career? Lows, highs, a bit of both?
So definitely, yes, got to be my parents. They've always supported me and etc. Got me into sport, stuff like that. Helped me financially, get places here and there, take me training. So it's been, they've probably my biggest influences. But in sport itself at the moment, it's got to be. It changes quite a lot. So 400 meter, for example, my main influence has got to be Jamie Balsh, Ewan Thomas, and then 2 Welsh 400 meter runners who both held British records in the past. So it's got to be them. But in the wider sporting industry, it's got to be Tyson Fury at the moment. Just his comeback and everything has been unbelievable. So it's just it's got to be him.
Got to come back and fight again, I reckon. He's got to. Oh, what an unbelievable! What an unbelievable fight that would be, mate. Oh, Usyk at the Principality. Oh, I'm seeing it now in the headlines. Oh my word. What about sort of to close it off, because you've absolutely been brilliant, and I think it's going to be one of the better parts. What advice would you give to someone who wants to be the next Joe Brier running at the next Olympic Games, either for Great Britain or in the Commonwealth Games for Wales?
Just enjoy it and train hard. Really, that's the main thing. Enjoy it, train hard, trust what your coach is saying, and just look at my journey, look at other people's journeys when they weren't great athletes when they're younger, weren't great juniors. Just stick at it, because the more you'll get more consistent with your training, and you get more consistent racing, and then gradually you see yourself on an incline, and all of a sudden you're on the major stage, which is where I find myself at the moment.
Unbelievable, ladies and gents. What a podcast has been. Again, nearly 50 minutes. Again, I'm starting to see all the podcasts getting longer now, which is brilliant, because obviously I got some points I have to hit, but I go so much on a tangent, which makes it 10 times better in the end when I edit it and I see it. So, ladies and gents, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you're on YouTube, Joe, thank you so much for coming on and giving your time. Obviously, extremely busy now. He's got some games at the end of the year. I don't know what now. I'm joking. Obviously, he's got very, very busy year. Obviously, going to Switzerland, like you said as well. So I really, really appreciate his time. So thank you very much, mate, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
No worries, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Ladies and gentlemen, that was another episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast, done and dusted. That was unbelievable to hear Joe's story. First Olympic athlete that we've had on, which is incredible. So hopefully not the last. What an absolutely unbelievable human being, works his absolute heart out, and incredible to see sort of his journey from juniors all the way up until the Olympic Games, and hopefully absolutely smash a medal in the Birmingham Commonwealth Games later on this year. So Joe, if you're watching, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully you and your sister can do us really, really proud. I'm sure you will in the Commonwealth Games later this year. And to you guys obviously listening, thank you so much as well for listening to another episode. We're getting to a stage now where the guests that we're having on are absolutely smashing it, and I'm loving it more than I ever have before. So please, if it has helped you, if you've enjoyed it, give us a share both on YouTube and on Spotify as well. Leave us a comment, a like, a subscription as well. Obviously, it helps an absolute ton, especially on Spotify. If you give us a rating, obviously in terms of the stars just underneath our name, it helps an absolute hell of a lot more than you can imagine. So thank you so much for that, and stay tuned for another episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast next Sunday at 6 p.m. UK time. Cheers, guys.